Hey, what is going on, all you bus nuts, geeks, and enthusiasts out there? Welcome to another episode of Motor Coach World. My name is James. When my family brought me here to the US, there were many culture shocks for us as we acclimated to life here. One of them was how inconvenient the public bus systems was here in comparison to China. But that was okay because my dad scrapped together every last penny he had and bought us a used Dodge Plymouth Horizon. At the age of 6, while other kids were asking their parents to take them to Six Flags to ride roller coasters, I was begging my mom and dad to take me for rides on the city buses. I had memorized every different make and model of buses being used in the city of Urbana, where we live, and which type were usually on what route. It was my goal as a 6-year-old to get to ride on each of the different models and experience the sound, feel, and smell of each one of them. I never met that goal because my parents usually told me to go practice math problems while they researched medical journals and consulted with child psychologists about my obsession with buses. While I begged my parents for toy and model buses for birthdays and holidays, I ended up with basketball cards and Lego sets as my dad frantically tried to get me into sports and more common hobbies that normal 7-year-olds had. And I ended up getting my Lego sets taken away from me after I built a fleet of buses with them. As I grew older, I realized that my parents wanted only the best for me, and like many other obedient Chinese kids, I became a Star Trek fan.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
At the age of 21, during my junior year in college, I went and got my commercial driver's license. I got a job driving the city transit bus and drove during the evenings and weekends for a college job. While most of my friends went off getting drunk at the bars on Fridays and Saturday nights, I drove the bar hop route known as the Late 8, which most of my buddies ended up riding home from the bars on. Out of all the things I've done in my 36 years of existence, I'm proud to say that a bus has always been some part of my life in some way, shape, or form, and it all paid off in the end. After 16 years of driving buses and motor coaches, I now have my dream job of talking about it on YouTube. No, just kidding. I now have my dream job of running a bus company, where I get to play with buses every day and talking about it on YouTube. There are many different jobs a motor coach and its driver may be called upon to do. There are charter trip drivers, schedule line run drivers, kind of like what Greyhound does, event shuttle or shuttle drivers. Some people even book coach buses to be warming or cooling or mobile restrooms for events and races. The list goes on, but today we're going to go over what it's like to be a motor coach charter operator in the US and what their days are like. A charter is when a person or organization reserves one or multiple buses to take their group to one or multiple destinations. Some example of charter trips are when a school books a bus to take their students to a field trip, or a company taking its employees to a baseball game for a fun day out of the office, or when a group of friends booking a charter bus to go watch a NASCAR race, all the way down to a university booking a few buses to take their sports teams to competitions. Sometimes the military will book charter buses to transport troops from one point to another throughout the country. A driver driving a charter trip will usually end up getting to know their passengers pretty well, as they're with each other for the majority of the trip. Before each charter trip, most charter drivers have to do some planning. We call it homework. This involves looking over the itinerary that the group has submitted when they book the trip with us. Things like addresses of destination or destinations they want to visit, what time they want to leave, what time they want to arrive, and what time they want to get back home. If it's an overnight trip, which many charters are, the driver will have to familiarize him or herself with where the hotel will be and refueling points, as some overnight trips will exceed the range of the bus's fuel capacity. And finally, where the group wants to stop for meals. The driver will have to be careful of where the bus will and will not fit into. Most groups booking charter buses will not consider the size of the coach when planning their food and hotel stops. A professional motor coach operator should always study all the details about where the group is going and the best routes to take days before the trip starts, and should always have contingency or backup options in case plans need to change. In the US, all commercial drivers that drive passenger-carrying vehicles are only allowed to drive up to 10 hours of drive time. Once hitting the 10-hour mark, a driver can no longer drive the vehicle until the driver receives 8 uninterrupted hours of off-duty time. This is strictly mandated and monitored by an electronic logging device that all commercial buses and trucks must have on board. Prior to December 18, 2017, commercial vehicle drivers could use paper logbooks to document their drive time. Today, all commercial vehicles must have electronic logging devices, or ELDs, on board. A driver can still go back to using paper logbooks in the event that the ELD should malfunction on their vehicle, but this is for emergencies only. So if a group wanted to charter a bus going from Urbana, Illinois to Washington, D.C., the trip would take about 12 hours to drive straight through and approximately 700 miles. If you add in refueling and meal stops, the trip would take about 14 to 15 hours. Most groups will want to go straight through without stopping at a hotel halfway through the trip. Obviously, one driver would not be able to do the trip, given the 10-hour rule. Now, every bus company has their own methods of handling this, but the most common way in the industry and the way Pure Air Charter handles trips like these is we'll send the driver out in a company van the day before the group actually departs for their trip. This driver will take the van to what we call a switch-out point, which is usually a halfway point within 10 hours of where the group originates from, and stay at a hotel, usually near a truck stop of some sort. Our dispatching department will pre-designate these switch-out points days before the trip is scheduled to depart, strategically finding areas where drivers will have access to food and fuel when they make the switch-out. The driver with the van will go to sleep in the hotel that night, expecting the group and the bus to arrive at the switch-out point the next day. The driver that actually starts out with the bus and picks up the group is called the first leg driver. He or she will pick up the group from their origin and drive them to the switch-out point. The driver that arrived in the van the day before, now with a full 8 to 10 hours of rest, will then take over the bus and drive the group the rest of the way and stay with the group throughout their trip. This is called the trip driver. But when it comes time to return home, this leg process will repeat, except instead of a leg driver, we call them relief drivers. Now, depending on the distance, some trips can take up to 3 to 4 legs to get the group to their final destination. On days when you have a 4-bus convoy taking a group to a destination that needs 3 legs to get there, it takes 12 drivers and 3 company vans to get the 4 buses there. Then it takes 12 more drivers and 3 more vans to get the 4 buses back when it's time to come home. In the middle of all this, hotel arrangements have to be made for each of these drivers. And when you have a company with 60 buses and have 4 to 5 of these multi-day, multi-leg trips happening at once, with 4 to 5 buses on each trip, the logistics become staggering for the office staff. Anyway, back to the driving part. As a new driver coming on board, you may find yourself doing many of these leg and relief trips, waking up at odd hours of the night, driving a bus to a hotel 7 to 8 hours away, then handing off your bus to the next driver, going to sleep, then driving home in a van the next day. Sometimes dispatch will ask leg drivers to not return home after a leg, but instead take their vans to other switch-out points somewhere in the U.S. to avoid a convoy either on its way back home or to another destination. So after 2 days on the road doing a leg trip, you as a driver may find yourself driving the van to a different part of the country instead of coming home, and staying the night to meet up with a bus the next day, driving a different group to another destination. If you've only brought one set of uniform for your trip, you may have to source out a place to do laundry, iron your shirt and pants, and shine your shoes so that you don't look and smell funky for your group the next day. Oh, and you may have to spend the rest of your afternoon or evening doing homework on where you have to go the next day after taking over the coach. Now, I did 4 of these back-to-back as my first trips with Pure Air Charter when I came on as a new driver. The trip driver, which are the drivers that actually get to stay with the group and enjoy the attractions they go to and the downtime in the hotel room day after day while groups are off doing their thing, are usually the more experienced drivers and have paid their dues driving leg and reliefs over and over again. You can imagine a 10-day trip to Cocoa Beach would be a great gig for a trip driver. You basically get paid to hang out at the beach if the group doesn't need you. Regardless of whether you're driving a single-day trip, a leg on a multi-day trip, or staying with a group as a trip driver, a charter bus driver will have a very irregular work schedule. A charter driver will find him or herself away from home for weeks at a time, then a few day trips in between where they get to sleep in their own beds, which will seem like a luxury at times. On certain months of the year, a charter driver may find themselves sitting at home for weeks at a time and wondering when dispatch will call them for their next trip and watching their bank accounts go dry. And if you're married, this is one of those jobs where you either have to have a really good marriage or a really bad marriage for this job to work out. Someone with a family and young kids may find an unhappy spouse at home with a career as a charter bus driver. Charter bus drivers are usually adventurous people and eager to hit the road and take groups to faraway places, especially ones they've never been to before. Someone who drives charters will rarely have a day the same as the previous one. A charter bus driver's experiences may include long hours, which can go up to 15-hour days. Even though you can only drive for 10 hours a day, you can be on duty for up to 15 hours. On-duty hours include things such as waiting for your group to finish eating, handling your passengers' luggage, refueling and cleaning your coach, basically anything that requires you to do stuff on company time. Other charter driver experiences include driving during odd hours of the night and constant sleep schedule changes, as one day you may be expected to sleep during the day so that you can drive a group leaving during the night, and a few days later, vice versa. Oftentimes when the group is sleeping or out enjoying events, a charter driver will be washing their coach, dumping lavatories, sweeping, taking out the garbage bags, and sanitizing their coach so that their group will have a clean bus to get back into. In the morning, a charter bus driver usually wakes up several hours before their groups do to get the coach pre-tripped, started, and warmed up or cooled down so that the group has a comfortable bus to hop into. As a passenger on a charter bus, remember that your bus operator is doing a lot more than just driving the hours it took for you to get to your destination. He or she is probably working 1 to 2 hours prior to any time your group decide to use the coach and clean up after you every time you guys disembark. Sometimes groups will make surprise changes to their itineraries, leaving the driver to improvise and drive by the seat of their pants, going to destinations on the fly that they have not planned out with no guarantees that a 45-foot coach can fit. I mean, think of how stressed some of you get when you have no idea where you're going in your own car. Now imagine that car of yours turning into a 45-foot long coach bus with 56 strangers who are sitting behind you judging your every move. Also, doing a U-turn will most likely result in bad things happening. Most experienced charter bus drivers will maintain a calm and professional attitude and do their best to get to their new ad hoc destination without panic. A good coach bus driver will be able to assess whether or not it's a good idea to pull a coach into certain areas long before they have committed to the maneuver. A good coach bus driver will also know how to explain to their passengers that they cannot safely pull their bus into a certain area in a calm and convincing manner without getting defensive or confrontational, while finding alternative options to still satisfy the group's needs. Now, being a good driver is a very important factor of doing this job. However, a good motor coach operator also has to be a good host, customer service agent, server, concierge or tour guide, janitor, and basically an all-out ambassador for his or her company that they drive for. Now, my favorite part about being a charter driver is getting to experience all the different food scenes. When the group is dropped off and you have multiple days where they don't need you, a charter driver has the opportunity to really explore and experience all the amenities that the area offers. Although some drivers prefer to spend their days just lounging around in their hotel room. To that I say, to each their own and whatever floats your boat. And at the end of the day, when I'm back from my trip, some of the thoughts that go through my mind are the smiles, laughs, and the memories I made with this group that I bonded with for the last few days or hours. Well, that and the butt-clenching moments from all the idiot drivers out there that make our lives a living hell. It's a level of accomplishment and pride that not many other professions can offer. And chances are, you've got 8 hours to get some rest so that you can get back up and go on your next adventure and do it all over again. If you guys can think of any other topics I missed about being a motor coach operator, please don't keep it to yourselves. Share the wealth and drop it down in the comment box below. I always say that bus drivers have the best stories to tell. I would love to hear about some of your motor coach adventures, whether you're a driver or a passenger, or both. As always, please don't forget to hit that like button if you like my video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. While you're at it, check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/motorcoach. And if you want to support me and my channel, you can become a patron. I would love you forever. With that said, thanks for joining me today, folks. And remember, if you're watching this, you are part of the motor coach world.